There's another story with that. Well, with the previous picture.
Hold on, Manuel. Hold on.
Oh,
We've got to
okay.
get into breakout rooms, but some
Okay.
people will join, and some people will want to listen more to you. So there we go. And I do believe that now continue with your story, because we're just here to chat with you some more. Over to you. Are you still here? Oh no, he left.
He'll come back. I'll watch for him. We'll give him a minute.
Suki, I wanted to tell you this was phenomenal. It was just what we need. We need to have more exposure to our cultural, the variety of cultural backgrounds that we have in our community and in our world. So much gratitude to you.
Oh, I just figured out what happened to Manuel. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot I was not muted anymore. He accepted a breakout room invitation. So I'm trying to force him back into the main session. Here we go. Manuel, I dragged you right back. You were in a breakout room.
Yeah, I said join a breakout room because you said we were going to do this. So I clicked on it.
Yeah, sorry. We didn't there are some things that we think are obvious that really aren't. So here you are back. All's good
yes, now. Yes. So that picture with my father and my youngest, talk about change. My youngest boy was getting ready to go into the circle for his very first time in dance. And my dad was going to be the one to bring him out there. Of course, my father brought me into the circle when I was little, and he's doing so with my youngest boy.
Oh, beautiful.
My dad is wearing what we call a roach, what you would call a mohawk. The mohawks were the people that the English settlers saw wearing the hairstyle like that, or headdress like that, with his golden eagle feather there and his otter trailer going down the back. My son is wearing a traditional Cherokee turban, and his little moccasins and his blue jeans and a ribbon shirt. And he's going to go out and dance for the first time. And then after that, he was able to earn and wear his own headdress. So in the next picture that was on there was my father, myself, and my youngest boy, 3 generations of dancers. And I think we're standing in front of a teepee. This is out at Watson Lake, powwow in September. But
maybe you could talk more about that straight dance.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're all straight dancers. You see in the picture there. My father's wearing an otterskin turban with a roach on top and eagle feather. And I'm wearing a porcupine roach, and so is my son. Our headdress is made out of porcupine hair. And the straight dance is a Southern Plains war dance, actually. And we go out there, and if you watch it, you can see the young men looking down, tracking their enemy or tracking their prey if it's a hunting dance. And they will then, the drums will pick up and the battle will ensue. And we recite our deeds in battle through that dance. It's a bit of an interpretive dance, if you will, but with very strict rules about how we can do it. The northern guys, they get to be a little more flamboyant in their movement, but the Southern straight dance is sometimes referred to as the gentleman's dance. And we're very smooth with our movements, and that reflects us as men and the way we should be as men. That we can be very gentle and smooth with our families and with those we love. But, if you come around town messing around with us or bring any danger to us or our families, we'll hit you in the head with a rock. We'll be able to defend our families and defend our way of life as well, because we are warriors. And that's what that long trail of fur going down our backs, or you'll see conchos or something like that, that represents our status as a warrior. In some of these old George Catlin photos, the sepia colored ones, you'll see warriors sitting and they'll have this piece of fur coming over their arm. They're showing it off to you. Like, look who I am. I am a warrior. So that's what that is, hanging down our backs. It originates in the Southern Plains. So once my tribe was moved from the Appalachian Mountains and then into Oklahoma during the Trail of Tears, we actually were we started exchanging culture with the folks that were already there, and the folks who were forced to live next to us, and so on. So hence through that we became Southern straight dancers. And our style of doing is a bit different because our traditional dance is a stomp dance. So we're a little more aggressive with our feet than, let's say, a Kyle or a Comanche straight dancer, that's their original traditional dance that they do. So we have our own little spin and variant on it as Cherokee people.
Hi, Manuel. I remember traveling through the South as a kid, and the Cherokee were still there, doing their little setup village and everything. I got to tell you, that was my first exposure because we go from Ohio to Florida every year. Yeah. And then I just finished reading Charles Frazier's book, 13 Moons, which is a fictional account of the Carolinas and the Cherokee in the 1800s. And that's what I was going to ask you. You all ended up in Oklahoma at that time and really intermingled with other clans and tribes then. But some stayed some got to stay.
You want to know how that happened?
Yeah.
So when Andrew Jackson decided to ignore the fact that we saved his rump at Horseshoe Bend and during the creek and sell us up the river, about 1,000 or so Cherokee hid off in the Appalachians there. And, they sent 7,000 Army soldiers after them. They couldn't find them. And so those 1,000 or so were able to stay there. And their descendants are who we know now as the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina, Cherokee, North Carolina. My folks originally were from what we now call Eastern Tennessee, up in the Appalachian Mountains there, and they were removed. So when my great grandmother was taken up by the soldiers, they took her and the kids off one way and put them in a camp. They took the men off another way, and they never saw them again. They didn't even let the kids get their shoes or anything. And they put them in this camp. Well, my great, she passed away there in the camp from the disease and everything, and malnutrition and whatnot. And when they got up enough Indians rounded up in those camps, they would start marching them. And my great grandmother had to bury her little sister on the way there, and the soldiers didn't let them stop long enough to dig a proper grave or anything. They had to bury in her little hasty dugout, maybe about 3 feet deep or so. And her little sister was 4 years old. My grandmother, great grandmother, was 7 when that happened. Mm-hmm. And they got to Oklahoma. It took them a year to get there. They finally got to Oklahoma, and she was adopted by another Cherokee family, which is the Brown family, and she took on that name. And I still have a necklace that belonged to her that I keep in my medicine pouch, and it has teeny tiny little shell beads on it, and it's from the 1800s, early 1800s. Mm-hmm. When my daughter is old enough, whose name is Walela, when she's old enough, she'll get that necklace.
Hey everybody, it's Bev, and we're at Granite Peak today, and we have a very new person to say hi to you. Actually, Kathleen got things going. Let me see if I can get this screen to go where I want it to go. So I think there's Kathleen. Okay, or someone. All right, there's Kathleen. All right, and over here, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, my name is Deborah Bradford, and I just moved in on Halloween.
And Jackie is here. Say hi, Jackie. Hi. So we're all here, and we actually got to see it on Zoom and on YouTube. Thank you so much, Manuel.
Wonderful.
Oh, how you doing, Jackie?
That's fine. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Jackie's a volunteer at the museum.
It's a lovely place. Do go if you haven't been there, please.
Yeah, you have done some amazing
Oh, I
changes
waited
there.
until you came.
Well, thank you.
I had a question. I've had heard the other stories about the smoking, and so I've avoided that place like the plague ever since I got here. So now I won't. But I had a question about languages. I mean, that's kind of my thing.
Sure.
And is there, do you guys work with any of the programs that are trying to preserve native languages? And is there anything in the museum about that?
Language is culture. And the preservation of culture is up to those people's culture who belong to it.
Mm-hmm.
We try to use Yavapai words, and every time we greet anybody or have some sort of event here, we always give that land acknowledgement of the Yavapai people, and we try to be respectful of their language and their words. Problem is with the Yavapai folks here today, there's only 4 of them that are fluent speakers that are left.
Mm-hmm.
They do have a language revitalization program going on with the children, but it's not mandatory that the Yavapai children attend the class, but many of them do, which is good. The problem is with that, it's not the original Yavapai dialect, given the fact that, like I said, there's only 4 of them that speak it. And I'm talking about the Yavapai here in Prescott, because there's a different dialect for the Fort McDowell Yavapai and different dialect for the Yavapai Apaches and so on. So what they're learning in their classroom here, from what I understand, is so a lot of the original, but then some of the words are being replaced by Supai words and other Havasupai and other Pai tribe words, which the language is similar, but it's like, French and Portuguese are both Latin languages, but someone who's French can't understand someone who's Portuguese, even though they're Latin languages.
Yeah.
So they're still losing a bit of that. And what I mean by saying culture is language, in Cherokee, if I'm talking about little water beetle, you've seen them in the water. They got little paddles on the side and they dug down and they come back up and so on. So the little water beetle is grandmother to the beaver. And if you don't know our creation story, you don't know what the heck I'm talking about if I say grandmother to the beaver.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, language is culture. And a funny side note, given that we're coming up on the holidays, our word for Santa Claus is split britches. Pants. It's a fat joke. Split pants is our word for Santa Claus.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm Bronwyn Butterfield, and I was told a while back, probably in the 80s, that that the Yavapai found ancestry, or actually living relatives, family in Mexico, and that they had moved there and they were trying to retrieve as much language as they could from that source. And then my next comment was just to tell me a little bit more about the dress you wear, the bells and the things like that. But could you respond to the the issue of the Yavapai again?
Sure. With the Yavapai, there are other Pai tribes that are actually in Mexico. We have some of their pottery and stuff actually for sale here if you come to the museum. But they, the Pai, and in that human language, Pai means people, the people's people. So the Pai tribe is actually down in Mexico, and they are relatives, and they are part of the Supai, Wallapai, Yavapai clan and band groups. And yes, a bunch of Yavapai did go down there because they didn't want to deal with the muck that was going on that is the United States government and their Indian policies. Same thing happens to my own people. There's actually Cherokees down in Mexico who decided to go away and not deal with this bogusness going on here. So there are Pai down there, and they are trying to grab what they can and try to hold on and just remain being indigenous people living indigenously the way that it was meant to be. And as far as we're concerned with going to Mexico, that border is made up You know, we were trading and living and exchanging ideas and thoughts and DNA, you know, for thousands and thousands of years before somebody decided to draw a line on a map. So as far as we're concerned, that is a made up border, and it's all our land. we're going to do it as we please. But we do deal with the political borders because we don't have to deal with, let's say, the United States policy on indigenous people. Mexico has a tendency to let them be, but at the same time, they have their own problems too, water rights and things like that. So, yeah, all of that is true.
Thank you.
That is absolutely true. And I hope they do. And I know the Apaches are doing the same thing, because there's some Apaches down there as well, trying to, you know, do that back and forth. And my wife's people, her own people, the Yaqui, the Oeme, they actually have dual citizenship. They can go back and forth between Mexico and here, because the Yaqui down in Rio Yaqui in Sonora, Mexico, as well as the Yaqui here in Tucson and in Glendale, and there's another community in Mexico, another one in Texas, another one in California. They're all related, and they're all the same folks, you know. So they're allowed to pass back and forth, especially during ceremonial time, Pascua and so on. So it's happening.
Thank you. You don't have to answer my question about the bells. Maybe someone else has a question.
Well,
Yes,
ma'am.
I have a question.
Sure.
I've got, oh, all right, for me?
Yeah.
I have two very old books that my grandmother brought back from, well, she took a trip from New Jersey across the country with some friends and spent time then, you know, seeing the West. And I loved these books as a child. They're close to 100 years old, because she made that trip in 1924. And I'm wondering if the museum would have any use for them. They're of course done by, one is signed Fred Harvey, but the pictures are so interesting. At least I found them fascinating, you know, as a child. And I don't know if these pictures from the book, if they would be of any use.
Ma'am, we would love to have those Fred Harvey books.
Yeah. Oh, well, I will just bring them, because here's one.
Wonderful.
And,
Oh, yeah, you betcha.
yeah. And they've got some great pictures. And I don't know who did this other book, but it shows old places build, and this other one. Anyway, I'll just bring them.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Otto.
Manuel,
Yes.
good morning. This is Peter, and welcome
Hey.
back.
Thank you.
Very good to see you again. The indigenous peoples of the United States are a testament to the power of the human spirit to survive a Holocaust of your own. And that you are here, and that you're now the director appropriately of the museum to the indigenous peoples locally, is a statement that we've made a millimeter of progress in the right direction. It's unfortunate to hear a report the other night on television about how bad the Native American health services are. As they call it, the Native American Health Services, what do they call it? The IHS.
Yeah, Indian Health Services. Yeah.
How, it would be probably hard to sum up in a few words, but take your time. How have you people survived? I mean, we don't know the depths of deprivation that have, you reference a girl who had to bury her sister. It's a heartbreaking tale in and of itself. What's been your guiding spirit then to keep you folks cohesive and willing to progress, and not just saying to hell with it and giving up?
You know, I think it's a testament to our own spirit, but a testament, like you said, to the human spirit. I think the Creator knew what we were doing when we were put on this earth, because we are the most adaptable species on this planet. You know, things change, and environment changes with our four-legged relatives and with the flyers and you know, even our standing people, the trees and so on.
Right.
They die.
Yeah.
They go away. But human beings are able to adapt. I mean, look at our relatives up in the Inuit relatives up in Alaska and in up the Arctic up that way.
Sure.
And the relatives, you know, in Africa in the hottest parts of the planet. Human beings are thriving.
Right.
We are adaptable species on this planet. The thing is, we need to not be so haughty and destroy it for ourselves. If anything's going to mess us up, it's going to be us.
Yes.
And I think as Cherokee people, we've always been willing to change and adapt. And I think accepting that change and then adapting and overcoming the situation is the one and only way to do this and to handle this. You know, you can throw your hands up in there and give up, but that's not going to get you anywhere, and that's not going to get your family anywhere. And our love for each other and our love for life itself and love for our own folks, our own ways, I think is one of those main reasons why we just kept going.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, you look at me and a lot of other Cherokee people, we're mixed bloods. And, you know, if you can't stay amongst your own, then you adapt and you love someone else, and you just keep moving on from there. But I was explained to me about one of the elders that about us Cherokees and how a lot of us are mixed bloods, that it's like when you throw a pebble into a pond of really still water, and that pebble, where it hits and splashes in the center of the pond, those would be your full-blood Cherokees, all traditionally tied and so on. And then as those ripples move out, they get fainter and fainter and fainter, but they're still Cherokee.
Right. Okay.
So, and eventually we make a big wave and splash on the shore, you know? So we're still here, and we're still doing it. Has to do with that motion of life and the fact that we do love each other, and we love who we are, and we're proud of it. And not that we're afraid to die, but we definitely ain't gonna give up.
Manuel, this is Rick Denny. I was very interested in your very brief mention of DNA, and it caught my ear, because as a retired geneticist and cell biologist and so forth, I'm very aware of the massive studies worldwide looking at the relationships of different populations, and where the pretty convincing scientific evidence that we're all Africans ultimately. We've all come that way. So I am curious, but I also understand that the reticence of studying ancient remains, and I'm kind of curious about your attitude and your feelings and your people's feelings about looking at tiny samples that give genetic evidence from remains, and trying to tie your people's history into the history of the rest of the humanity. So I'm would you elaborate a little bit on your attitude toward that?
Sure. You know, when we lay our relatives down to make that journey, to disrupt that journey by digging them up and then have a proper burial, you know, you're pretty doggone sure who these folks are. You know who they are. You already have a lot of that evidence. Do you really need to dig them up and sample them too? Yeah, I have one anthropologist friend tell me, he come in, and this is when I was new here at the museum. He come in and he says, we were always bumping heads about this, you know, and I cheesed call him a grave robber. And of course they don't dig like that anymore, but you know,
right.
he come and showed me this book. He's like, wow, this young girl that they dug up in the Andes down there, and she was buried with all this stuff, and and had, this jewelry and finery and whatnot. And you can tell that she was loved by all the objects she was buried with. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and I said, did you really need to dig her up to know that her family loved her? Did you need to pull all that apart to know that her family loved her? It's not like we don't love our children, just like anybody else. Like you don't love your chicken right there. We don't love our children. Mm-hmm. So, digging her up just to prove that point was not a thing. But as far as the DNA goes and the scientific evidence goes, I know that there recently was remains found up in the Pacific Northwest. And they were literally, and it opposed the whole, because it predated, these remains predated the whole Beringia land bridge theory.
Right.
And they were able, through DNA, to extract that DNA and then tie that to one of the local tribes there. So this pre-Beringia man that they found was actually genetically related to the tribes that live there now. Mm-hmm. Basically kind of throwing a lot of that land bridge theory out the window, which was kind of a little controversial scientifically. A lot of folks don't want to buy into that and whatnot. But if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't be able to prove that fact that, that the school books, the textbooks that they were teaching in school were kind of, not the whole truth. Oh. So, right. And they did go along a bit more with our creation stories that we had been here longer than that and so on. So, I do have, I think at a limited amount that research is necessary, but there's no reason for the Museum of Man to be holding on to, for the last 100 years, or last 80 years, I should say, 4,000 human remains of people that they know are Navajo. They know that they're Tona Odom. They know that they're Hohokam people. They know who they are. There's no reason for them to continue studying them and cutting them up and keeping them in a cardboard box in somebody's basement. There's just no reason for that. They need to go home. And those are my thoughts and feelings on that. For a limited amount, I think that we should conduct that research just for all of humanity, but not at mass like that. And not every single time you dig somebody up, you need to cut into them. You can tell culturally who these folks are by the objects that they're buried with. You can tell who they are. Mm-hmm. And if there's something just completely out of the ordinary, like, the thing has red hair and and is 6 foot tall as opposed to being shorter with dark hair, then let's check that guy out. He might be some Viking that got lost and lived amongst the tribe and got buried. Let's check that out. Right. But other than that, typically we know, anthropologically speaking, when you buy the objects that are there in the area that you're discovering these remains, who those people are. We really don't need to be cutting them up. And a very small, minute amount is okay, but why hold on to the whole skeleton in a cardboard box for 80 years? I don't understand that.
I think that makes perfect sense. I would just say that as far as doing the tiny sample that is required, as you just pointed out, often you find surprises, as you said, that you don't know what you're going to find. Sure, right. You make assumptions about what you're going to find, but you just don't know unless you look. Anyway. Very, very interesting response. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Manuel, Fred Krabs, I would like you to touch on the Navajo symbol, the whirling log, which
yes,
sort of taken over by the Nazis. Want to talk about the history of that a little, please?
Absolutely. So the earliest archaeological evidence found on this planet is a whirling log, or a swastika, if you will, that has been carved into a mastodon tusk. And it is about 15,000 years old. So 15,000 years ago, people were looking up at the North Star, and depending on what season it is, spring, summer, fall, winter, you will see the Big Dipper moving around that North Star. And if you placed a picture, or you had a still of that Big Dipper, and then layered them on top of each other with every season, you will see a big giant swastika in the sky.
Oh, interesting.
Ancestors, no matter what continent you came from, all looked up in the northern hemisphere, of course, looked up and saw that same doggone thing in the sky every night. So when you're talking about those whirring logs or the swastika symbol, swastika, by the way, is a comes from Sanskrit. It's not a German word at all. The Germans actually referred to it as the hooked cross. So swastika means it's not a German word. It is from Sanskrit, from India. And so it's not a naughty word like we come to think of it. And that symbol was so prevalent in American popular culture. I have, if you come to the museum, you can see our whirring logs exhibit. We have in the museum symbols, that symbol being used by everyone from the Girls Club to Coca-Cola to California Fruit to Treasury stock to you name it. And when we joined World War II, there was a huge propaganda movement to demonize the symbol because the Nazis misappropriated it. And they actually had Native people sign this document, which was purely propaganda. It wasn't a legal document at all or anything. And say, yeah, so someone's saying, oh, Heather says there's swastikas in the tile design of the courthouse floor. It was built, of course, before the 1930s. Correct. In the 1930s, before we joined World War II, that propaganda movement was made, and they made folks basically stop using it and said it's a Nazi thing. So for whatever reason, within one generation, we all decided that was a naughty symbol, and it meant hate and it meant evil. And that's just not the case. It was prosperity and good luck and good fortune. And to indigenous people, when we build our sacred fire, we lay those logs in those cardinal directions. So east, south, west, and north. And then if you lit these logs, if you light them, and the world is turning, we understand the world is turning. So as the world turns and you take a stick with fire on the end or a string on the end and you turn it, you're going to have that little trail coming behind it. So the logs whirring, you have the trail of fire coming behind it, and it goes around in a circle. And that's where you get that symbol from. The Navajos use it that way. The Hopis call it the journey. They call it coming to the center of the universe. Which once again, looking up at the North Star and the Big Dipper going around it, or Ursa Major going around it, you see that symbol. But I encourage you, if you want to know more about it, to come to the museum and take a look at our exhibit on the whirring logs.
Big Dipper.
And we have some amazing stuff in there that help explain that much better. I hope that answered your question. Cool.
Question. Yeah, I'm going to mute us.
Anybody else?
Hi, it's Suki here again. Thank you so much, Manuel, for taking some extra time with us. We know you have a busy day yet ahead of you at the museum, so I think maybe it's time we'll let you go now and get back to work. But this has been informative, and listening to your prayer was so spiritual, and everything was really good. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me again to speak to you, and I look forward to doing it again sometime, maybe. Huh?
Thank you so much.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you. Mato.